The malware used in the attack was custom-built and demonstrated advanced capabilities. It could identify and target specific file types, avoid detection by standard security software, and had backup protocols designed to continue even if initially blocked. Further investigation uncovered that the network had access to a range of sensitive government systems. They had been monitoring police radio communications, accessing warrant databases to know when they were being investigated, and even manipulating traffic camera systems to create blind spots in their operational areas. The city's 911 dispatch system had been subtly altered so that calls from certain addresses were automatically downgraded in priority or routed to corrupted officers. The technological infiltration was so complete that the network had essentially created a shadow control system running parallel to legitimate city operations. The aftermath revealed extensive institutional corruption. Over 400 arrests were made, nearly $50 million in drugs were confiscated, and numerous public officials were charged. Several city employees resigned, and the fake legal aid office was permanently closed. The drug supply in Northbridge dropped by more than half within a single week, leading to a measurable decrease in overdose-related emergency calls. The arrests included not just street-level dealers and network operatives, but accountants, lawyers, business owners, and public servants. Among those charged were a deputy police chief, 2 city council members, a county clerk, multiple police officers from various precincts, and the director of the city's housing authority. The charges ranged from drug trafficking and conspiracy to bribery, obstruction of justice, computer crimes, and racketeering under federal RICO statutes. The $48 million in seized drugs included massive quantities of synthetic opioids with street names like White Ember and Gray Death. Substances so potent that a dose smaller than a grain of salt could be lethal. Toxicology reports confirmed that these drugs have been connected to at least 73 overdose deaths in the region over the previous 18 months. In addition to the drugs, federal agents seized $8.7 million in cash, 14 properties, 32 vehicles, and numerous bank accounts. Asset forfeiture proceedings began immediately, with funds earmarked for victim compensation and community rehabilitation programs. The operation exposed how the criminal network had exploited community trust by operating through seemingly legitimate organizations and corrupting public officials, demonstrating how criminal enterprises can hide behind respectable facades rather than operating in obvious secrecy. The network had weaponized the very institutions meant to protect vulnerable populations, turning places of refuge into mechanisms of exploitation. Harbor Legal Aid had been providing some legitimate services, helping families with immigration paperwork, offering language interpretation, connecting people with social services, which made the betrayal even more profound. Real clients had walked through those doors seeking help, never knowing that their vulnerability was being exploited, their information potentially compromised, and their community's safe haven corrupted. Some clients had even been recruited into the drug operation itself, offered money or promises of immigration assistance in exchange for small tasks that drew them deeper into criminal activity. The network had understood a fundamental truth about modern criminal enterprise. The best hiding place isn't in the shadows, but in plain sight, wrapped in the language of social good and community service. They had studied non-profit regulations, learned grant writing, attended community meetings, and built relationships with legitimate advocacy organizations. They had created a veneer so convincing that even experienced social workers and legal professionals had referred vulnerable clients to them without suspicion. In the weeks following the operation, federal oversight teams were deployed to audit city departments and rebuild public trust. Community leaders struggled to reconcile the betrayal with their need for legitimate social services. The case sparked national discussions about institutional vulnerability, the exploitation of non-profit status, and the need for greater transparency in organizations serving at-risk populations. Northbridge became a cautionary tale about how criminal organizations adapt to modern society, understanding that the most effective camouflage isn't darkness, but the appearance of legitimacy and purpose. The FBI established a temporary field office in Northbridge to coordinate the ongoing investigation and provide community outreach. Special prosecutors from the Department of Justice took over cases to ensure independence from the compromised local system. The State Attorney General launched a comprehensive review of all nonprofit organizations operating in the region, implementing new oversight requirements and audit procedures. Federal marshals were temporarily assigned to provide security at courthouses and government buildings as the prosecutions moved forward. Community response was fractured and complex. Some residents felt vindicated. Their complaints about unresponsive police and suspicious activities had been dismissed for years, and now they had proof their concerns were legitimate. Others felt betrayed and angry, particularly those who had genuinely relied on Harbor Legal Aid for assistance, and now questioned whether any of their personal information was safe. Immigrant communities faced particular anxiety, unsure which organizations they could trust, and fearful that legitimate needs for legal help might go unmet with the office closed. Town halls were organized, but attendance was sparse. Trust had been broken not just between citizens and government, but within the community itself. Neighbors wondered if the people living next door had been involved. Activists questioned whether their movements had been infiltrated. City employees faced suspicion, even if they'd done nothing wrong. The social fabric of Northbridge had been torn, and repairing it would take years. The legal proceedings stretched on for months. The prosecutions were complicated by the need to separate coerced participants from willing collaborators, to determine which officials had actively participated versus those who had merely looked the other way, and to untangle the web of shell companies and front organizations. Defense attorneys argued that cultural misunderstandings and language barriers had led some defendants to unknowingly participate. Prosecutors countered with evidence of deliberate criminal intent and sophisticated planning. Plea deals were offered to lower-level participants in exchange for testimony against network leaders. The media coverage was intense and often sensationalized. National news outlets descended on Northbridge, framing it as everything from an immigration enforcement success story to evidence of systemic racism in law enforcement, depending on their political orientation. Local journalists struggled to report accurately while respecting the community's trauma. Documentary filmmakers sought access to court proceedings. Social media exploded with competing narratives, conspiracy theories, and political finger-pointing. The real story, a complex tale of exploitation, corruption, and institutional failure, often got lost in the noise. Educational institutions took note. The case became required reading in criminal justice programs, taught as an example of how organized crime adapts to modern regulatory environments.